Steph, after a season like that and a game like that, what did you feel was important to say to your team right after it ended?
Just how proud I am of them. You know, they have been an absolute joy to coach. It's an incredible group of women, an incredibly connected group. They're a great example to everybody.
The Indiana Fever's playoff dreams came crashing down in overtime against the Las Vegas Aces, but it wasn't the loss that stunned fans. It was head coach Stephanie White's shocking statement afterward, words so pointed they left the entire WNBA buzzing about what she really meant. The Fever's playoff run had been nothing short of electric. With Caitlin Clark rewriting record books and Aaliyah Boston anchoring the paint, Indiana looked like a team ready to shock the league. They battled through a grueling semifinal series, pushing the defending champion Las Vegas Aces to the absolute limit. Game 5 was everything fans could hope for. High intensity, lead changes, and the kind of drama that makes basketball legendary. But when the dust settled, it was heartbreak. The Fever fell in overtime, their season cut short in the...
What it means to just put one foot in front of the other, to persevere, to welcome people into the fold, to not give in to circumstance, to lead with grace and dignity, to sacrifice for a greater good and a common good. I'm so thankful to coach these women, and I'm just thankful for this experience with them.
Cruelest way possible. For players and fans, it wasn't just a loss, it was a gut punch, a reminder of how thin the line is between victory and defeat in the postseason. Yet, as crushing as the defeat was, what came after would overshadow everything that happened on the court. Stephanie White stepped to the microphone, and instead of the usual coach speak about effort and execution, she delivered a statement that shook the WNBA conversation to its core. When Stephanie White addressed the media after the game, her tone was raw and unfiltered. She praised her players for fighting through adversity, but then she dropped the line that made headlines everywhere. She suggested that the Fever weren't just battling the Aces, they were battling forces beyond their control. White spoke of unbelievable inconsistency and said the team deserved better than to have their season decided by questionable officiating. To fans already furious about controversial calls,
Steph, we talked about resiliency with this team all season long, but tonight it felt like that wasn't a strong enough word. Have you been a part of a game like that? And just it felt like everyone laid it all out there.
I feel like there's so many games that we've had this year where that's happened. Where you just you lay it on the line. And I appreciate what O said, because as coaches we talk about this all the time. Like, this group continued to allow us as coaches to push them further, harder, to move the bar, to raise the bar.
Those words were gasoline on the fire. What made it even more powerful was the delivery. This wasn't a coach calmly analyzing strategy. It was an emotional leader putting the league on notice. Her voice carried the frustration of a locker room that believed something had been taken from them. And for anyone listening, there was no mistaking the subtext. White was calling out the referees, and indirectly, the league itself. For those who follow the WNBA closely, Stephanie White's postgame explosion wasn't completely out of character. Throughout the season, she has built a reputation for refusing to bite her tongue when she feels her team is being treated unfairly. Earlier in the year, after a controversial finish against the New York Liberty, White made headlines when she described the officiating as unbelievable disrespect. She didn't stop there. She went on to say that her players deserve the same respect as anyone else in this league, sparking days of debate about how rookies like Caitlin Clark were being officiated. That wasn't an isolated moment. Across the season, White had hinted at frustration with the lack of consistency from referees. In one interview, she emphasized that players train too hard and invest too much only to have games swung by what she called questionable whistles. To some, this was a coach simply standing up for her team. To others, it sounded like a coach constantly looking for someone else to blame. But what makes White different from other coaches is her delivery. She doesn't tiptoe around her words. She speaks in blunt, emotional sentences that land like punches. And because the Fever's rise has been fueled by Caitlin Clark's popularity, every comment White makes gets magnified under a national spotlight. A simple critique that might go unnoticed in another market instantly becomes front-page news when it comes from Indiana's head coach. So when White made her statement after the Aces loss, it wasn't just shocking because of what she said, it was shocking because it confirmed a pattern. This was a coach who had been pushing back against officiating narratives all season. And now, in the highest stakes moment of the year, she doubled down. Stephanie White has never been afraid to challenge the system, but her post-game remarks after the Fever's playoff exit weren't just another critique. They felt like a line in the sand. Unlike earlier comments made mid-season, when there was time to recover and move on, this was the end of the road. A season of hard work, growth, and momentum had collapsed in the span of one overtime period, and White's words reflected that raw frustration. What made this statement different was the stage. This wasn't a regular season game in June, it was the deciding battle in a playoff series watched by millions. Caitlin Clark had pulled in a whole new audience to the WNBA, and every move the Fever made was magnified under a national lens. So when White suggested that her team had to fight more than just their opponents, it wasn't just a local Indiana story, it was headline news across the entire league. It also struck deeper because of the way it aligned with what fans were already feeling. Throughout the season, there had been constant chatter about how Clark was officiated, about whether referees gave established stars like Aja Wilson the benefit of the doubt while letting rookies take harder hits. White's words echoed those frustrations, giving them a voice at the highest level. Suddenly, it wasn't just fans on Twitter saying the refs were out of line, it was a head coach putting her reputation on the line to confirm those suspicions. And then there's the tone. In past moments, White's critique sounded like part of the game, a coach venting in the heat of battle. But this time, her message felt heavier, more deliberate, as if she wanted the league itself to hear her. It wasn't just about one call or one quarter. It was about integrity, about fairness, about whether the Fever were being treated with the same respect as the defending champions. That's why this statement is being called shocking, because it felt less like an emotional slip and more like a challenge directed straight at the WNBA. The moment White's postgame words hit the internet, the reactions came fast. Fever fans flooded social media with clips of the controversial calls from Game 5, using White's statement as validation. Finally, someone said it out loud. One fan tweeted, while another declared, "White's just saying what we've all been seeing all season." For supporters, this wasn't just a coach defending her team, it was a leader exposing what they believed was a systemic problem in the league. Sports media didn't hold back either. Talk shows debated her comments, with some analysts praising White for standing up for her players and others warning that her words could bring fines or disciplinary action from the WNBA. Headlines popped up across sports sites. White challenges integrity of officiating. Indiana coach explodes after Fever's heartbreak loss. The narrative quickly shifted from the Fever's elimination to the coach's fiery press conference. Even rival fan bases weighed in. Aces supporters dismissed White's words as excuse-making, pointing to Aja Wilson's dominance and the Fever's missed opportunities late in the game. "Don't blame the refs for missing free throws," one Aces fan posted, highlighting Clark's struggles from the line in crunch time. Others argued that officiating always gets messy in playoff basketball, and that White was just venting frustration in the heat of the moment. Inside the WNBA community, players also reacted. Some veterans quietly liked or reposted fan clips highlighting questionable calls, signaling subtle agreement without speaking directly. Others stayed silent, knowing the league keeps a close eye on how players handle officiating discussions. The lack of an official response from referees or the league only added fuel to the fire, leaving White's statement to dominate the conversation unchecked. By the end of the news cycle, one thing was clear. Stephanie White's comments had split the WNBA world right down the middle. To some, she was a truth teller, refusing to stay quiet. To others, she was a frustrated coach who crossed a line. Either way, her words ensured that the Fever's season wouldn't be remembered just for the loss, but for the controversy that followed. When a head coach makes a statement that questions officiating and hints at larger integrity issues, there are always consequences. The first and most obvious possibility is fines. The WNBA, like the NBA, has strict rules about publicly criticizing referees, and coaches who cross that line often pay the price. If the league decides White went too far, a financial penalty could be announced in the coming days. It wouldn't be the first time other coaches have been fined before for far less pointed remarks. But beyond fines, there's a deeper question here. Will the league listen? White's words struck a chord because they echoed what many fans and analysts have been saying for months, that officiating in the WNBA has become a flashpoint. If the league dismisses her comments as nothing more than sour grapes, they risk alienating a fan base that already feels ignored. On the other hand, if the league acknowledges the frustration and takes steps toward transparency, this moment could spark real change. For the Fever, the fallout could also shape their identity moving forward. White's statement may cost her in the short term, but it also showed her players that she's willing to go to battle for them, even against the league itself. That kind of loyalty can strengthen a locker room, giving the team a sense of unity heading into next season. Players want to know their coach has their back, and White left no doubt about that. At the same time, there's a risk. If White becomes labeled as a coach who constantly challenges officials, she may face tighter scrutiny from referees in future games. The narrative could shift from bold truth teller to serial complainer, and once that label sticks, it can be hard to shake. The Fever could find themselves under the microscope, with every whistle dissected even more than before. For the league itself, this controversy lands at a pivotal moment. The WNBA has never been more popular, thanks to Caitlin Clark's arrival, record-breaking attendance, and national TV deals. But popularity comes with higher stakes. Every mistake is magnified, every controversy amplified, and every question about fairness becomes a headline. If White's statement triggers a larger debate about officiating standards, it could force the WNBA to confront one of its biggest challenges yet, proving to a growing audience that the game is being called fairly. At the end of the day, Stephanie White's post-game statement was more than just a coach venting frustration. It was a moment that cut right into the heart of what makes sports matter: trust. Fans tune in because they believe what they're watching is real, that the outcome is determined by the players on the court, not by outside forces. And when that trust wavers, even for a moment, the entire system shakes. White's words may not have mentioned the referees by name, but everyone understood the message. She was questioning the consistency, the fairness, and the respect her team received. And in doing so, she spoke directly to the frustrations that Fever fans and, frankly, a lot of WNBA fans have been voicing all season. That's why her statement spread so fast, why it dominated headlines, and why it may go down as one of the most memorable press conferences of this year's playoffs. The question now is, what happens next? Will the league issue a fine and sweep the comments under the rug? Will they finally acknowledge that officiating has become a growing controversy? Or will this simply become another moment in the endless cycle of sports outrage, talked about for a week and then forgotten? For the Indiana Fever, the legacy of this season won't just be about the heartbreak of losing in overtime. It will also be about the statement their head coach made when the stakes were highest. A statement that showed her players and the world that she was willing to risk her own standing to defend her team. For some, that makes her a hero. For others, it makes her reckless. But one thing is certain, it makes her unforgettable. And maybe that's the point. Maybe White's words weren't just about one playoff game. Maybe they were about sending a message to the league, to the referees, and to anyone watching that the Fever aren't going to stay quiet. They're going to fight for respect, both on the court and off it. And if the WNBA doesn't take notice, the noise from fans and coaches alike will only grow louder. So now the spotlight is on the league. Will Stephanie White's shocking statement become the spark that pushes the WNBA toward more transparency and accountability? Or will it simply fade into the background, remembered only as a coach's emotional reaction to a painful loss? Only time will tell. But one thing is for sure, Stephanie White has made her voice heard. And after this, the conversation about officiating in the WNBA will never be the same.